Ein Milim. One might say there are no words for this moment, this year, for how much has changed since standing in this very spot 1 year ago. Ein Milim because of how much loss there is in the world. Ein Milim because you're feeling overwhelmed with blessing just by being here tonight. Tonight, Kol Nidre is shaped by some of our tradition's most powerful words. 3 times in a row, each with a bit more intensity, we ask that our vows be forgiven. Forgiven, eradicated, and nullified, and no longer valid for this coming year and secondarily for last year. This annual prayer, so central to our Yom Kippur liturgy, has a history of being quite contested. Did you know that there were rabbis who believed that the Kol Nidre prayer should be deleted from our liturgy? Sar Sholom Gaon said, "No power in the world can annul vows anywhere." Kol Nidre is a foolish custom, and it is forbidden to say it, taught Amram Gaon. Rav Chai Gaon said, "We do not annul vows on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. You should be stringent on this and not say it." Those rabbis were strong in their opinions. In revisiting the words of the Kol Nidre prayer this year, I was struck by these comments from our great thinkers. Gaon literally means geniuses, who vehemently opposed one of our most known and evocative prayers. Their problem with this prayer, it seems, was the hierarchy of words, that some words can annul other words. And they were clear. They cannot. Why make a vow, a promise, a pledge, an obligation, which in the end can simply be erased? We are taught just the opposite, that words have power and to be careful with how to use them. Most scholars believe that Kol Nidre has early roots, as the wording is very similar to legal contracts written by the Babylonian Jewish community as early as the 6th and 7th centuries. Another popular theory connects the wording of the prayer with the religious dilemma facing medieval Spanish Jews during the Inquisition in the 15th century, during which many Jews were forced to convert to Christianity or face death. They created Kol Nidre to nullify their vows of conversion before God, and our own Rabbi Lou of blessed memory writes about the Kol Nidre prayer in his book, saying, "It seems to have been composed when the Jews were ordered to convert or endure pain of death. Spanish Jews chanted it when they gathered secretly to observe Yom Kippur." And like a true rabbi, he then teaches, "We're not really sure of any of this. The date fits nicely, but there's no historical corroboration for the theory." But he was sure of one thing. Centuries ago, then and today, we need words to help us understand, to comfort us, and to provide guidance, to reflect our lived reality. So these times of persecution seemed ripe for a composition like Kol Nidre. Rabbi Mordechai Yaffe of 16th century Poland shared a different opinion. The Kol Nidre text that we have is absolutely meaningless, and its only value is musical. In his view, it is not the words that hold meaning. We keep Kol Nidre in our prayers because of how the music moves us. What do you think? Do these words hold value for us today? Or is it the melody that evokes feeling in you? Regardless of when this prayer was written, the idea that Jews were in a time of persecution and needed to pretend to be someone who they were not, to adopt other words and rituals from other religions, possibly even fully convert to save their lives, resonates with me powerfully today. To keep their covenant with God, Kol Nidre was written so that Jews could say, "I take it back. My words and actions are not what is true in my heart." The prayer did not come from the Torah or other Jewish texts. It was developed from a real need. Like Kol Nidre, our prayer tradition comes from spontaneous words. Hannah prayed for a child. Aaron prayed for his sister Miriam to be healed. Anna elna refana la. Psalms of David were written as poetry, supplication, lament, and praise while living his life. And thousands of years later, we rely on their words that were once written for personal, intimate moments in time and were written down and passed on to us. And we call these words keva, our fixed liturgy, which guide us through most of our communal prayer life today. And this year, in a particularly challenging time, many of us are constantly searching for the right words to say. Words that will bring us comfort, hope, and optimism, and that articulate our clarity and confusion, and maybe lead us to action and positive change in the world. This past Monday night, October 7th, at the Community Yizkor Memorial Service at Emmanuel, clergy were called upon to offer words of memory, reflection, and comfort. And I noticed one of the presenters say, "Ein Milim." There are no words. I didn't blame them. I have thought the same thing. When grief overwhelms us, sometimes it is hard, maybe even impossible, to find our words. The front page of the Jerusalem Post this past Monday, October 7th, was a large blank page that read, "1 year on, words still fail to capture this day." With this in mind, I want to revisit the kavanah that I offered on Erev Rosh Hashanah about both the absence and power of words over this past year, which we are clearly feeling right now. Rachel Korazim, Israeli educator and scholar, visited us, as she did with many communities all over the world, to teach and transmit poetry as communal learning and healing. She began by challenging the notion of ein milim. She reflected that this is a phrase which many Hebrew speakers will say when they encounter something truly awful or shocking: there are no words. As she taught through poetry, she said, actually, it's not true. There are words. She presented us with heartbreakingly beautiful poetry that had been written since October 7th. She taught through themes and imagery, and particularly through the intricacies of the Hebrew language in which all of these poems had been written. She made us cry, she made us laugh, and she taught us through the poetic form of writing that in fact, Yesh Milim, there are words. One of the poets that she presented acknowledges that in her world, the old ways of small talk have changed entirely. This poem, written originally in Hebrew by Lital Kaplan, is called Home Front Command's New Regulations for Small Talk. Ma nishma, butal. What's up? Canceled. Instead use ma nishmat, ma nishbar, ma nishar. What's shaken up? What's beaten up? What's blown up? Ma koreh. What's going on? Banned. Alternatives? Ma kores. Ma nikbar. What's breaking down? What's forever gone? Instead of the rude ma shlomcha, how are you? We must frown in the face of our friend and ask, ma milchamtecha, how war you? And instead of the standard response forbidden by strict veto power, Eitzli hakol beseder, I'm fine, in fact, it is required to say, hakol besedek, everything's cracked. And the truthful ones will answer, hakol beshever, hakol beshever. Everything is shattered. Everything is shattered. Nishma, nishbar, nishar, nikbar, kore, kores, beseder, besedek, beshever. Even without knowledge of Hebrew, you can hear the play on words, how close they are in sound and yet how far away in meaning. So much emotion is expressed in these lines, a new reality, unending uncertainty in a shattered world. We don't expect these words to fix, but sometimes just saying the truth accurately as you feel it can be a path for healing. This year we have found ourselves in many moments of prayer, longing for the right words to say. When awful things happen, our communities here within these walls and beyond often act very quickly to respond. Memorial services, vigils, protests, big statements, and without minimizing those vehicles for communal expression, what I have realized in our fair share of moments of grief is that so many of the words, the milim that we need, are right here in our liturgy. There are endless examples, but here are some of the prayerful words that have stayed with me this year. Baruch atah Adonai, matir asurim. Blessed are you, God, who frees the captive. Every day in the morning, blessings of Birkot HaShachar, the hostages are made present in my day. Be'erev yalin bechi laboker rina, tears may linger for a night, but joy comes with the dawn, reminding us that difficult times are temporary and joy will come. This is from Psalm 30, also included in our daily morning prayers. V'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot ha'aretz, we ask God to gather people from the four corners of the earth for the sake of bringing peace to all of humanity before we wrap our tzitzit around our finger in preparation for the Shema. And finally, Shomer Yisrael, Shemor She'erit Yisrael ve'al yovad Yisrael, guardian of the people Israel, guard the remnant of Israel and do not let it perish. This is from Tachanun, our quiet moment of personal prayers and daily supplications. You see, so much of what I am feeling or longing for is right here. And maybe we can all take comfort knowing that this is not the first time that the Jewish people have experienced grief and trauma and have turned to these very prayers. And maybe it's the words themselves that connect you to your Judaism, or maybe it is the place where the words are said. Maybe you love coming to Minyan, but it is for the community, not the prayers. Maybe you love coming to Havdalah or a Friday night service, but it's the music and the rituals that move you. Maybe deep down you feel an obligation to tradition to say Kaddish as a mourner, but it is not the Aramaic poetry. It is the moment to stand and think of a loved one while surrounded by others. Whatever your reason, whatever it is that connects you to Judaism and to this community, you are welcome here and you are not alone. And yet, as we stand here tonight, ready, or as ready as we can be, to enter into these next 25 hours of words and prayer, I want to offer that maybe there is something in these pages that you haven't seen before or noticed. Maybe this year you will connect to certain words and phrases and ideas that bring you a sense of comfort and understanding, or that offer you a new way to look at the world, or a challenge on how to live life differently. I hope you will have moments that bring you greater connection to the Machzor this Yom Kippur. Because while we can allow ourselves to have those moments of ein milim, unsure of the words to say, as Jews or as people who love Jews, we cannot allow ourselves to simply stop there. We can search for the words or the actions to ground us, guide us, and move us forward. You may be familiar with the Hasidic story of a young boy and his Aleph Bet prayer. Each week he sat in the synagogue with his father and he wanted to pray, but he didn't know how. They would sit in the back where more listening was done than singing. Meanwhile, the boy had learned to sing the Aleph Bet from his mother. He sang it all the time, on his way to school, in the bathtub. One day during the prayer service, the boy began to sing the Aleph Bet, and loudly. His father tried to quiet him, but the child only sang louder and louder. At last, he sang at the top of his lungs. He ran to the bima and called out, "Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe, take these letters of the Aleph Bet and rearrange them to form the words that I mean and what I want to say to you." When everyone heard the boy's words, their eyes filled with tears, and the entire room started singing the Aleph Bet along with him. Aleph Bet Bet Gimel Dalet Hey. Perhaps you've been that child, unable to follow along or connect. Have you ever wanted to offer a prayer and felt unsure where to start? Or maybe you haven't been able to find the prayer that you've been wanting to say. 9-year-old Ronan Matin is a child with autism who is largely nonverbal. His grandfather took him to a performance at Boston's Symphony Hall in 2019. As the music came to an end, the room was almost silent, except for the holding on of the final notes. And Ronan exclaimed, "Wow!" His grandfather, Stephen, was initially worried that his grandson had disrupted the performance. Most audiences love a sweet child's voice in a great moment of silence. I may know a little bit about that, but this particular moment was bigger than that, and the reactions from the audience and musicians were nothing but love. The video went viral, and poet and author Todd Boss was among those who heard it, and he wrote a children's book inspired by the event called The Boy Who Said Wow. This child who primarily interacts in the world without words, was so moved that he used all of his strength to let out his praise and overwhelming emotion in only one word: wow. Ronan's wow expressed two of our three categories of prayer: praise and thanksgiving. He didn't have to take out the Siddur and search the index for the prayer to say when you've heard a beautiful piece of music. He simply called out the word that was in his heart. Adonai sfatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. God, open up my lips so that my mouth can declare and praise you. His lips did exactly that. Adonai sfatai tiftach, just before we enter what is the most personal and individual moment of talking to God with our words, the Amidah, we ask God to help us find the words. I'm sure that at least once you've gazed desperately up into the sky and wondered, what on earth is happening in our world? Maybe you have looked to our liturgy and maybe you have not. Maybe you've shared the words on your heart or read a poem or sang lyrics to a song that moved you, or maybe you have yet to share the words at all. Knowing that there are already words can alleviate some pressure of finding your own words to say. We learn from Rabbi Earl Grolman, Zichrono Livracha, who was a master of consolation in a time before grief specialists. He wrote, "In times of crisis, silence is not golden. Baruch Dayan Emet, we say, blessed is the true judge of truth. These are the words said upon hearing the news of a death or at the time of tearing one's garment as a mourner. Plenty of words exist to try to speak to the shock of death. And yet the Torah teaches that after the deaths of his sons Nadav and Avihu, Aaron was silent. Vayidom Aharon." Psychologists suggest that silence is a trauma response. We have seen this trauma response on full display in this last year. How can we possibly find words to speak to the deaths we have experienced, individually and collectively? There are times when our heart and mind are genuinely frozen to a state of Ein Milim, no words. But even in a year of Ein Milim, I want to challenge us to have a year of Yesh Milim. Those words might show up in the form of prayer, diving into our liturgy and committing to a greater understanding of the prayers in our Siddur. Those Milim might be in the written form of postcards or text messages to fellow Americans in the next 4 weeks, encouraging them to vote. Those words might be to a friend to ask how they're doing or to repair a broken relationship. Those Milim might be in a song that helps you get through the day, or a protest to bring them home. And for the next 25 hours, you are here, and you will be surrounded by many words in the Machzor and the words written on your own heart. We will do our best to point out phrases to connect you along the way. You just have to be open and ready to receive them. Despite our deepest grief and fears and brokenheartedness, Yesh Milim, you are here, and there are words. Gamar Chatima Tova. May each of us be sealed in the book of life for a good year.